Hi again, everybody. What a delight it is to be back with the right-hander Don August, the former Brewers pitcher. I'm Tom Pippins. We're produced by Jason Rock, and I'll tell you, pitching to the corners, my post-MLB career abroad. Don, who had a fantastic rookie season with the Crew, and then he pitched winter ball, etc. He found himself all over the world, harrowing experiences as well as amazing experiences. He may know about 100 languages, but Don, welcome. It's fantastic. A 9-year endeavor. And since we last talked, you found a publisher. It's out there. I'm thrilled for you.
Yeah, it took a little while to finally get to this point. This whole thing, like you said, started 9 years ago. And maybe, we can almost say maybe a little bit sooner than that because, when I was done playing professional baseball, especially, at the end of my career, the international portion of it, um, I would sit around with friends and, back patio or watching a ball game or something like that. And, the guys are hanging around. We're start telling some stories. And I go, well, I got a story, and I'd say something that happened to me out in Taiwan or the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Mexico, all those places I had been to. And, after a while, after, every now and then I'd tell another story, my people were telling me, why don't you write a book? And I said, I ain't going to write a book. That takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So my last year playing professionally was in the year 2000. So I guess it kind of would start a little bit right after that. Um, then 9 years ago, so I think it was about the year 2015, I finally just decided maybe I should write a book. Maybe that might be kind of a fun thing to do. Who knows how it'll come about or turn out. And I had done some interviews with a couple of other authors who wrote books, and they interviewed me for their books. And so I remembered their names, and I contacted two of these guys and see if one of them at least would help me kind of start this process. The first guy I spoke to um, wasn't able. He was, he had another project going on, so he said he'd like to, but he said I just can't. And then the second guy said, yeah, I can help you out a little bit. So the process began that he would we'd call one another up and be on the phone for about 45 minutes to an hour, and I would just kind of start telling him some of the stories. And he would type it up, and then how many days later he would email it back to me, and I'd check it out and look it over, and I'd look for the little mistakes, the wrong date or year, wrong place, just little things like that, and I'd send it back to him, and then we'd have another session on the phone and just kind of do the same process over and over. And it took a little while to do that. It was for about, I'd say we worked for about 2+ years. Now, the the whole idea I wanted to do with the book was kind of tell about the crazy things that happened to you as as me being an American, being in foreign countries and trying to play baseball. So that's where I really thought my stories would be from. So I guess with this author, this writer, he was kind of want to get the background, and the background really went back to from the time I was pretty much born, and kind of covered a lot of stuff. So by the time we were finished with the Major League Baseball here in the United States, and the point where I want to go from the foreign countries at that point, we had like on a Word doc, I think we had like 380 something pages of stuff, and well, we decided, well, we might have to do this in two parts. So that was the first part, and we tried to do something with it, and it didn't really work out. So I just said, okay, well, let's just move on and make this a second part, and we'll see what we do. But to go into that second part, this guy wasn't able to continue. He had other things he had to do. So that was like the time we were together. That was like 2.5 years that we were together. And then I began to write the second part. I would do that and get all that foreign country stuff and the international baseball part of my career in. And that took me about another 2 years or so. And then to get this whole thing put together somehow, I had contacted my former Major League Baseball teammate with the Brewers, another pitcher, Mark Knutson. And we kind of started to peel through these two parts. And then he came up with the idea that, instead of writing this book chronologically, he wanted to do it topically by, just each chapter would be a different topic. And so we worked with that to do this part. That took about, I'd say, 2 years. And then we had to shop around for a publisher. Now I think about at this point, right about there, I think it was the time then, Pip, me and you were doing these interviews about stories, and basically these stories were, I thought my son gave me the idea about, hey, during the COVID time when there's no sports on TV, people are dying just to hear stuff, and we kind of did our stories. Remember that those days, Pip?
Yeah, I remember you talking about your son and his impact on it. That's fabulous. If I may just interject, why did Mark think you should go not necessarily chronologically? Was it a matter of just captivating people with, because obviously, hey, you had a fine career just to dust the slab, the pitchers going all the way back to 89, opening day pitcher, 13 up, 7 down, fourth in the balloting for American League Rookie of the Year. You were the ace, and you probably figure you're going to be around for a long time, but things happen in this funny game. And then to me, it was a blessing in disguise because you had a career like none other in taken in totality.
Yeah, definitely that, as you said, I got a good start in the major leagues, and as everyone knows, things happen. I was hoping this would be about a 15 to 20-year major league career, and maybe prepare a Hall of Fame speech and stuff like that, like a lot of people dream about. But that part didn't happen. But the dream I did get to enjoy is I did make it to the major leagues. I played for 4 years, so it's more than a cup of coffee. I got to do a lot of good things and enjoyed the major leagues. But that's definitely where everyone wants to be and everyone wants to stay. And so once I kind of left the Brewers, the adventure kind of started happening. Trying to stay there, I with a couple more other organizations fighting in their minor leagues, trying to get an opportunity back. Things just didn't quite happen, and then the opportunity to start giving myself a chance again was to go around and play these different leagues around the world. And the first one I ended up going to was in the Mexican League, and then I did a winter ball season, in the Dominican Republic before that. Then after my first season in Mexico, I went back with another winter ball, but this time in the Dominican Republic. And after Mexico, for 2 seasons, 1.5 season, I guess. Then Taiwan opened up, and so that stuff kind of really started taking place, and that's where this craziness started to really happen, and that's where the main part of the story, the main part of the stories I wanted to tell about were in these foreign countries. Um, well, with Mark Knutson, I gave him about another 300 plus pages, so he went through that whole thing. It was like about nearly 800 pages of Word doc stuff. And so then, he came up with these ideas of doing it by topics, because the first part of the book was a lot of background and leading up. So he looked through that and just used some stuff there. And the main stuff that I wrote is the part that we wanted. And so he made this connection with connecting those two parts. And he's the one that came up with the idea about doing it in the different topics.
It really seems to be a smooth flow that way. And again, grabbing people and then telling these stories. And of course, you pitched in Europe as well. You have told some fantastic stories, a couple of which may be worth repeating. I mean, you're talking about, am I going to lose my life here? We've got all kinds of issues. We have weather issues. Please share that, because that's why I say your career, taken again as a whole, is as unique as anyone in the history of baseball.
Well, I think that's what kind of got us the idea of the story, the book, that actually we can actually get one. There's been so many baseball books written over the decades and decades, but I felt like there was nothing really telling stories about what it'd be like to be an American and playing in different countries around the world. And it kind of makes it a connection to the point where all these foreign players that we bring into the United States, from around the world, maybe we can get a little bit of an insight where they're coming from. We got players, a lot of players now are coming in from Japan, and we've had for quite a long time with Major League Baseball, the Latin American, countries providing us players. And what was it like for them? What's there's a culture shock and a culture difference for them. With the food and language, and trying to find place to live, and living your daily life, and then trying to go to the ballpark and perform that how people expect you to. The teams expect you to play, and they always expect you to be very good. So that's the kind of how the angle that we kind of went along with. And as we were speaking in, when the COVID came around, it was a good time for me to share a lot of those stories. I did share stories, about being drafted, and what's it like in the minor leagues, and a lot of those stories people were interested in over the COVID. But the best ones, and the ones that we did a lot of them, were the ones when I started playing around the world, and the career went in that direction. And not too many people can have played in the major leagues, had gone to these different places, and then I think there's a place for that story to be told. Like, again, people know all about the history of the major league players, and the big teams over the history of MLB. But this, I thought, was a little bit different. And as an American who's now playing in different countries, also just because I also played in the major leagues, when we traveled around to our games, we were on our chartered flights, and we were going to the 5-star hotels, and everything was the best that possibly could be. Now, as a guy who was in that position once, trying to make it back, and now taking these horrendous bus rides in Mexico, and just different types of food that I had to deal with eating in Mexico, and then especially in Taiwan, where it was really different. And then eventually, at the end of my career, in the last year I did play internationally and professionally, was in Italy, and that was really good. That was some real good food there. I didn't mind eating all that
Yeah.
good Italian food.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. But again, some of the language barrier, all of this, I remember harrowing experiences, right? Where you thought somebody was going to take your life, or, was it hurricane we're talking about? All kinds of weather activity. Share a couple of those stories, because what makes it so entertaining isn't necessarily what went on in between the lines, but outside.
Yeah, a lot of the book is talking about, it. In the book, we talk about games and big time stuff like that. And one of the chapters really kind of delves into that. But this is like a lot of like the topics um, in the book. The chapters are titled after classic rock and roll songs. The first one is the first chapter is called "Break On Through" by the Doors, which was my favorite all time rock band. And so that chapter kind of does the background. It shows, coming up, from high school and poking through the college, and in, the 1984 Olympics that I participated in, and making it finally to the major league. So that was called Break On Through. The second chapter is called Who'll Stop the Rain? As you kind of mentioned, there's some stories about some weather issues and things we had to deal with, such as I went through 2 typhoons, which are hurricanes, and a major earthquake. So there's stories I talked about those and that. One of the chapters is called Ramblin' Gamblin' Man. And I think the story that we probably remember the most was, I think, is the favorite one that people talk about when we did our interviews, a few years back, when we were at the point of, just telling stories during COVID time, and before I got my publisher. And that was the story about when there was, it was 1996 when I was playing my second year in Taiwan. And there's the rumors and stuff like that the gamblers and the gangsters were kind of getting involved and getting into the games, and getting players to throw games or finish them up in a certain way. You can only win by so much, or do whatever they kind of had plotted out. And so that story was about then, when me and my another American teammate, we were just kind of unsure if that was really happening. It was just kind of the rumors that were getting around. And so we kind of started saying this, hey, let's take a real good close look. Let's really watch the game closely to see if there's any indication of that. And for a while, we didn't see much. We couldn't quite tell. Then a couple of things did occur that kind of started making us think, maybe there is something going on. And the the first thing I think was I was pitching in a game, and the batter, I threw a pretty good pitch. The guy beat it in the ground. It was one of those swinging bunts, It rolled right down the third baseline, right on the chalk, pretty much, and it was just ready to go foul. And my third baseman grabbed the ball real quick, and well, now the guy's way past first base by this point, and the only chance we had is if it was going to roll foul, and I thought it was, and he grabbed it, and then he kind of made one of those faces like, "Oh shoot, well, whoops, sorry, what a blunder." But I kind of looked in his eyes, and I caught, something was really wrong with that. Now, on top of that, I'd say about maybe a week or so later, all of a sudden this guy, he was a Dominican player playing on the team, and all of a sudden he's got this brand new expensive watch. So that kind of threw some more alarms in to me and my other teammate, like we were kind of checked this out, saying, there might be something here with that. Then I think the next thing that came up was not too longer after that. We were playing a home game in our home city called Taichung, and before the game, there's like a lot of security and a lot of something kind of going on. And I remember I looked across, from our dugout to the other team's dugout. I saw this guy had like some wrapping, white bandages wrapped around his head. And we kind of got some word about that the night before. These players on the other team supposedly got, like, I don't know, say trapped in about two different gangs, kind of got them to they were supposed to do two opposite things. One of the gangs wanted them to win, and the other gang wanted them to lose. So they're in a tough position because only one of the gangs was going to be happy about this outcome. So I think the game that came on the short end of the stick found these players that were supposed to do it their way, and they kind of took them. I don't know if you want to say kidnapped them back to their team hotel, and they pistol whipped one guy across the head, and one guy was going to try to say something. They kind of beat him up a little bit. They stuck a gun in one guy's mouth and threatened to kill him, and they wanted their money back and all this kind of stuff. So therefore, that next day, that we're observing is, we're seeing all that security presence, which was we're like, okay, what's something crazy is kind of happening here. Kind of backtrack a little bit. A couple of years before, now this is my second year in the league, and before I showed up, there was supposedly an American player that jumped off of a building and killed himself. So it was they said that he was depressed and committed suicide. That was the story. But behind the scenes and the rumor mills that we got, from kind of inside, was this guy kind of did something against the gangsters that they didn't like, and they threw him off that building. So these kind of stories are now kind of building up and adding up. So now I would say it was at least another month or so after when the guy had his head bandaged up and stuff. We were playing up in Taipei, which is the capital of Taiwan. And just one of the things that we did a lot in Taiwan to pass the time is we went to these karaoke places. They call them KTVs, karaoke TV. And I had a lot of friends, and a lot of my teammates would often want me to go with them and to have a good time. They brought me especially because they wanted me to sing the American or English songs, and I don't sing good for nothing, but they always liked that. So it was always turned out to be a fun night out. So I did that a number of times, and I'd always know my teammates who would be there along with maybe some of their friends. I recognize a lot of people, but this one occasion then now, and it was in Taipei, that a guy that worked with our team, wasn't a player, but he worked with the team. I went out with him often to have a good time. I liked the kid a lot. So we went into this KTV in Taipei, and the room was a little bit bigger. There was a little bit more people. I didn't recognize anybody. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird, but maybe some of my friends and other people will show up, whatever. So we go in the room and we kind of sit there, started hanging out. People are singing songs. We're, have a couple beers. We're just relaxing and enjoying ourselves. And then at this one point, this Taiwanese lady comes up to me, speaking perfect English, and asked me, "Hey, how are you doing? What's your name?" I told her my name, and "What are you doing here?" I go, "I'm a baseball player." And, "Oh, that's so cool." And, "What position are you?" "Oh, I'm a pitcher." So just making all this small talk, being nice and being friendly in the way I took it. Sat there, just listened to more songs and maybe some other small conversation, whatever it was. But then out of the blue, she came, she then said to me, which made things very serious. She said, "Do you know what the untruth game is?" And I immediately knew what that was. I'm like, "Oh wow, okay, what's this? What's this going on here?" So I kind of look around and read the room a little bit, and I go, "I don't recognize these people." I go, I wonder if these people are gangsters or something or other. So she starts going in. So I had my head, I'm looking into the ground. I'm just trying to think, okay, if this is the case, how am I getting out of here? Because we're like on the 11th story, of this building. And I'm kind of looking where the exits might be. And, I'm starting to think that. And then she starts asking me a few more questions. She says, "Do you see that girl over there?" I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Do you think she's cute?" I go, "Yeah, yeah, she's a cute girl." She goes, "Well, you can have her." I'm like, "Oh, wow. Okay. Now this is getting more crazy and serious." And I'm trying to think, okay, what's going on? And she looks at me, she goes, "Oh, you look sad." I go, "Oh, I don't know if I look sad," but in my mind, I'm just thinking how to get the heck out of here, in one piece. Then she said something to the effect, "Right now, these guys," and she kind of pointed over to where this one table was probably about 15, 20 feet away. And I go, "Okay, that's where the big boss is. He's sitting in the middle. He's got a lot of people surrounded him. He's the main guy here." He goes, they'll give you $10,000 US just to think about it. You don't have to do it, but just to think about it. And I go, "Nope, nope, I don't want no money. Don't be giving me any money because if you take money, whether you do it or not, you belong to them." So I avoid that. And then she points to another girl. She says, "How do you think that girl looks cute?" "Yeah, yeah, whatever." "Well, you can have her too." So now I'm getting $10,000. I got two girls they're trying to force onto me and all this stuff. And I just kind of ponder it for a little bit more. And I'm just like, how I get out of this was my main thing. I was definitely not going to do it. So I told her, I said, "You know what? I can't do this. I won't do this. So you got to go over to the boss over there and tell him I'm not going to do it." So she kind of looks at me for a second, and then she says, "If you don't do it, you're not going to win another ball game for the rest of the year when you pitch." I said, "Well, whatever happens, happens." So she
The
gets
world
up
is
and she
going.
kind of
You're trying to
was that.
think, but you have petrified down.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm flashing back to the kid that had the player that had the bandages around his head, and I'm thinking about the guy, the one player that you know didn't go along with her, crossed the gangsters or something, whatever it was, and threw him off of a roof. I'm thinking all that stuff. I'm thinking, okay, I'm seriously in trouble here. So she
Mm-hmm.
walks on over, and she whispers into his ear and says what I told her, and he just immediately looks right back at me, and we make eye contact to one another. And I'm like, "Oh crap! I pissed him off, man. I'm in trouble now." And then I'd say about 2 seconds later, he stands up in his place there, and he screams out loud over the music and stuff like that. And I don't know what he said, but I assumed, he said the party was over because immediately when he was done, the music shut off. The people all got quiet. They all stood up, and then they all started making their way to the exit. So I'm like, okay, well, let all these people go to that exit. I'm gonna hang back here, and I'll just slide to that fire escape place, or there's a door exit there that I was gonna wait. But then I had a few people kind of grab me from behind, just kind of started shooing me towards the exit, and then toward the elevator. So thinking that I just wait for them to all leave and then me sneak out. Well, that plan didn't work. And now I'm getting into the elevator, and I'm squeezed the last one in. So I'm in the front, and like my body's like right up against the doors, and they closed. And now I got my back to everybody. And well, I guess the one good thing was immediately was the elevator wasn't going up, because if that elevator was going to be going up, that would be meaning we're going to the roof. And I think, okay, well, I'm getting tossed off this. So going down was a big relief. But like I said, I had my back to everybody, and I'm literally waiting for someone to come around and put a thing around my neck and choke me out. And so I was nervous about that, and which meant those 11 floors going down were like the slowest 11 floors to go down on an elevator, it seemed like to me, which luckily and happily, we got to the bottom floor. The door opens up. I went out the elevator, and then they went. So when they came up here, when they went left, then I decided I'd go right. And I I found the guy that brought me. There was a buddy of mine, and I said, "This is one of the few parts in the book where I kind of have some f words." It was kind of like, "What the f did you do? Why did you effing bring me here? If you ever do this again, I'll effing kick your ass and blah blah blah." And I mean, I let it out on him. I mean, it was like a surge of relief that this adrenaline explosion came popping out after I realized I was probably going to be okay. But then he was started crying. He's saying, I'm sorry. I didn't want to, but they made me and I had to do it." So all that kind of came up, and then out the door I went.
But now it's complete. As you look back on pitching to the corners, my career, I got to get my the specs here, my post MLB career abroad. Don August with former teammate Mark Knudsen and the forward by the old left-hander Dan Plesac. What was it like for you to relive the experiences? And I think as we start to round third and come to home plate, Don, how satisfying is it after all these years? You know, you were steadfast in your career from start to finish, and that's the way this book can parallel that way.
Yeah, we like I said, we told them stories, with those interviews with you back in ages to get them out, and then like I said, we finally got the publisher, which is McFarland and Company, and they got a deal. We signed the deal with them, but it would take 2 years though. It took 2 years from the time that we gave them our hard copy, and they went through it, and then we had to go through the process of editing and stuff like that. We had to take out 20,000 words, which is like, we had to take out a bunch of little stories, or we had to trim a lot of them down. It's like this, like what I liked about telling the stories. I like to kind of really give good description, that people can, imagine it and stuff like that. So we had to kind of water it down, and they said, well, we got to cut these stories down because you got to keep people's attentions. People's attention spans are not that big, so you can't really go on and on these stories. So we had to kind of trim them down a little bit, and then we had to get pictures. I had hardly any pictures, but I ended up digging up a bunch of pictures. Then we had to get those done, and then it was like another part they had to do. They had to format the book, and it just other projects were ahead of me. So we had all these different things, and it took 2 years from the time that we signed our deal and until it was just released. The book was just released this last September the 27th. So as you said, yeah, it was a great relief. It was for the first kind of a relief was I kind of set out to do it, and I finished it. The next relief was that we get a publisher, that someone would actually make a book out of it. So that was pretty big. And then this last relief is like finally, 2 years of waiting with the publisher, and a total of 9 years when I really started to throw ideas down on a piece of paper. It was the big relief that it's out there and it's a tangible thing. And I got the book here myself, and it's in your hands, and you look at it and you see how it finally turned out. And then you want people to read it, of course, but I feel like I'm vulnerable though. It's like, okay, I put this thing out for everyone in the world to go read, whoever wants to read it, and you hope that everyone's going to like it. But in baseball, as a baseball pitcher, not everyone's going to like you, and they're going to criticize a lot of things, and there might be people saying there's parts of the book that they don't like, or parts that I thought might be pretty funny, and they might tell me it was pretty stupid and dumb or whatever. So you got to get that old baseball pitcher, on the mound in the stadium, tough skin on that. You just can't let things affect you and bother you, and just go with it. So it's been a long process, and some people, friends of mine, and a lot of people I know have went out and bought the book, and they've read it, and they've given me a lot of good feedback, which is satisfying and stuff like that. So, it's been a journey. It's been 9 years in the making, and it's here, and And these are the stories that I was telling you, Tom, in those interviews, man. A lot of those stories are in this book, and I just hope a lot of people go out and get a chance to go get it and read it, and hopefully enjoy it. And I always like to see the kind of feedback, if it's gonna be good or bad. I've always said, just tell me what you think, if it's what parts are good, what are not. That's just so I would know. And it's been a really, it's a good experience, to go through all this.
Yes.
Not saying one day I'm going to be an author. That kind of sounds weird. I can
That
typically say a
can
author.
add to
And Mark
the
Knut's my
library.
buddy. Back in our day,
Yes.
we were both in the Nationals organization, and we both were roommates in Tucson in the Pacific Coast League that year. And we got traded to the Brewers for Danny Darwin, and then we were good friends with our time in Milwaukee, and we remained buddies and stuff like that after all these years after playing professionally. And to get Dan, Mark's idea was to get Dan Plesac to do the forward on it. So we got him to buy into it, and so it's just a lot of things. And what's been really neat is, like I mentioned, a lot of friends and people who've read it have called me. Maybe I haven't spoken to them in how many years, but give us a good reason to talk on the phone and catch up with each other. And a lot of former teammates have bought the book who got mentioned in it and stuff like that. And it's been a big time positive thing, and I'm glad I did it at least at this point.
But absolutely amazing. Like your career, you just never gave up. And in a sense, you reinvented yourself, and to be able to do it with your former teammate, Mark Knudsen, it's marvelous. One more time, everybody, Pitching to the Corners, my post MLB career abroad, Don August with Mark Knudsen, the forward by Dan Plesac. Where is the book available? Would you tell everybody before we close it off, please, Don?
The places that I know where you can get it, you definitely just go on to Amazon. Amazon sells everything. You go on Amazon and just
Yep.
click on my name or the title. It'll pop up, and you just click some buttons, and you'll be able to order it and have it delivered right to your front door. Another way is just to go through the McFarland and Company's webpage, and there's a way that you can look up books and order it through that way too, and be delivered right to your front door also. So those are the two places I'm most aware of. I don't know if the book is out and about. I don't know how that process works, if you have to sell so many books first before they kind of put them out at Barnes and Nobles or places like that or not. But I guess if you're at a bookstore, you can try to look around. But on Amazon and McFarland, I know are for sure the two places that you definitely can get them at.
That is absolutely fantastic. It has been so neat to reconnect and talk about the project. Now it's out there for everybody to enjoy. Congratulations on it. God bless you and your family, Don August. It's always a pleasure. Couldn't do this without our producer, Jason Ruck, who was all over it when you're talking about where and when to get the book, etc. So it's been incredible. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to another connection at some point in time. Who knows? Maybe volume two. You never know, but you have a lot in this book. Thanks again, Don. Super to see you.
Thanks, Thomas. Great seeing you again. Retelling these stories is awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care, everybody.